morning, Mark Rang here, publisher of The Sun, and today my guests are Peter Donahoe, chairman of the Budget Committee, and Bill Marvel, who's a lifelong member of the Budget Committee.
It seems that way sometimes.
So you guys started, just a little wrap up of where we are with the Budget Committee process. You just started meeting this last week or this week, or where are we?
We've been meeting forever, it seems. December, I think 13th was
Yes.
A major meeting. We had one in October, I think. And,
Yes.
And we meet pretty regularly, even through the year. But come January, it seems constant.
Okay, so you're meeting now, and let's kind of review where the whole process is, because people don't understand the deliberative and the Charter Commission, which I was on. We tried to get rid of the deliberative session, and for the reasons why people generally don't attend. So talk about that and how you want people to view the deliberative this year.
Sure. So this is basically how it works. We meet twice a week, more or less through the month of January and into early February. The warrants are due to be finalized mid-February, typically every year. And between mid-February and the end of February, we meet only once more, I believe, to sort of wrap everything up. There's a public hearing that follows at the end of February, and then we roll right into deliberatives the first week in March. We have the school one night, and we have the town the next night. And during our meeting times now, we get presentations weekly from the town. The various departments will come and make their presentations based on what their spending requests are. The town manager oversees that process, and school does the same thing. We've seen half of the school's units at this point, and we are going to see the next half next week.
And the deliberative bill is, I mean, it must be frustrating for the Budget Committee, because needless to say, and I go to them, and me and like 3 other people, basically.
That's right.
But what happened last year is that the Budget Committee recommended $800,000 cut in the school budget.
1.2 million.
Yes.
Okay, 1.2.
That's right.
I thought the deliberative was, okay, I may have that wrong. So, but whatever the number was at the deliberative, it got reversed, it got restored.
Sure.
So talk about
As often happens. Yes, calling it frustrating is something of an understatement. The Budget Committee tries to look frugally, as frugally as possible on all departments. And you go to the budget, to the deliberative meetings in March, both the town and the school, but the school in particular, and special interest groups have basically managed over the last 30 years or so to figure out how to dominate those with just a few dozen people, really. They can bring 55, 60 people and carry anything they want, and there are certainly that many people and more who have an interest in it. And I've noticed in past meetings that sometimes if it looks like they're going to have more opposition than they suspected, this new communications system I'm learning of called texting brings more of their own troops. And so they tend to steamroll any opposition.
And why is it that you don't think more people show?
Discouragement. I would say that people are simply demoralized by SB2 and the deliberative process. At the recent selectmen's meeting where people were complaining about their taxes, the question I asked as I moved through the crowd was, would you go to the deliberative? Did you go to the deliberative? And the answer I got mostly was, what's that? And then the answer I got from some people, old timers who know what it is you can't win. They've got it locked up. And that's true so long as people believe that.
And you think, Peter, that I had a couple comments from someone that said, "Oh, the Budget Committee's got a good group this year," but is the budget? And I think a lot of people think the Budget Committee basically is a bunch of tax cutters who are on the Budget Committee, but that's not true. I'll say that for you. but that's usually what ends the result. That's usually the result. You never add anything to the budget. You tend to analyze it and then usually recommend cuts. Is that true?
Well, I don't want to dominate
You
this.
can run a little. Well,
Okay. The Budget Committee has actually recommended sometimes that people may be trying to cut too much if it seems inefficient. But it also is true that at times the Budget Committee has been dominated by tax cutters, as in 2011 when they made what I think was a bad political mistake in trying to cut the budget so much that by state law the meeting couldn't raise it back to what it had been. And what that gave us was a budget committee for several years that was dominated by people whose primary purpose was to pass the school budget no matter what, and to vote for anything the school wanted. And that's part of the reason we're at a $40 million budget.
So Peter, what do you think of your budget, fellow budget committee members?
well,
this year?
I'll sort of build on what Bill just mentioned about sort of the chronology of the Budget Committee over the years since 2011. I began in 2013, shortly after that. And I would say that the first few years that I was on the Budget Committee, including up until maybe about 3 years ago when I recently re-upped, there wasn't a lot of discussion. There wasn't a lot of debate. There were a lot of hands going up to approve things. It was very frustrating, and the then chair and myself were just talking constantly about ways to try to get people engaged and try to get more people to talk about the issues rather than just approving everything as it was given to us. In the last, as I mentioned, 3 years, and especially last year and this year, with the trajectory of the budget, in particular the school budget, we have seen many, many more people becoming on our committee, very engaged in the process, people whom I never thought would speak out against certain spending initiatives are very outspoken about them. And I'm glad for the participation. We have very long meetings. I feel very bad about that. We seem to be averaging about 3 hours per meeting, although I think we're a little shorter than the planning board at this point. But I'm very glad for the group that we have now and the amount of participation that's going on. Pardon me, to look at this at the matters before us. We have some big decisions to make, and we have a lot of more information to gather before we're able to move forward with that. But this is going to be an important year.
So let's launch into the school, a little bit of the school budget in a minute. But first, even last year, we did a number of stories where, and I know our reporters, and I think we even asked you, Bill, that it's not clear exactly what authority the budget committee has. Like, is the budget, so for instance, a school or the town creates a budget, right, and it goes in front of you.
That's right.
Is that then the budget at that point? If you take $1 million off the town budget, that's the new budget that people would vote on, that goes to the deliberative. It's not changed, ends up in the warrant.
Well, it's the budget that goes to the deliberative to be argued.
Right.
Let's assume it gets past that.
Yes.
That would be it.
Yes.
Yes.
So in the schools, but in the town, does the town have a default budget too?
Both town and school have default budgets.
So explain the default budget. So let's say the budget committee cuts $1 million from the town budget. That appears on the town warrant.
That's right.
And then also the default budget appears on the town warrant. I know that happens with the school, but I guess that...
Yeah, both are true. You'll see the identical thing on the warrant for the town and the school. Both the final budget as it was ratified by the voters at the deliberative and the default budget are going to appear on the warrant. And there are instances where the default budget is higher than the proposed budget, even without any changes.
And that's another whole, I'm sorry to interrupt, that's another whole story, because the way the default budget is constructed.
Correct. It usually happens more often with the school.
That's correct.
That the budgets are very close together. And that may be a function of the budget committee determining what the town default budget is and the school determining what the school's default budget is, the school board.
Because they're always outside of and maybe you know, but maybe you know what's outside the school, the default budget, but it's like the core budget plus special articles plus this plus that, right?
Yeah.
So it adds up.
Contractual
Yes.
obligations.
And,
Right.
and I think the argument, and I know I've made it at the deliberative session on the town side too, is that whether you believe in the cut, and I think in the school deliberative, some people were speaking just to cut the budget, but other people at the deliberative saying, look, even if you don't agree with the cuts, you should at least give people, the voters, a chance in April to decide between two budgets.
That have a little difference between
Right.
them.
Yeah,
Yes.
I seem to remember someone expressing a similar sentiment 2 cycles ago. That was the year we had the $800,000 proposed
Okay.
budget, and that was the year that we once again got kneecapped at the deliberative, and you spoke out and said the very thing that you just mentioned.
Yeah, kneecap. That's a budget committee.
I won't
expression.
take credit for that. I think that was one of our other members that mentioned that.
I
yeah.
don't.
All right.
No,
So how about predictions? Let's talk about the school budget. I mean, it was a little bit of a bombshell, I guess, from my point of view, that Kevin Richard said perhaps we should close the school, and he even targeted a school, Pine Tree.
Yes.
So do you think, and of course we have the reval that we all experience and the property taxes going up.
Right.
Do you sense there's some real momentum out there which would result in more people showing into the deliberative and these cuts getting through?
If that doesn't happen now, it will never happen.
I agree.
If enough people come to the deliberative sessions and know when they are, I mean, you have a letter in today's paper that indicates that a fellow who understands the process doesn't realize what the schedule is. He's talking about the deliberatives in April. Well, they're in early March. If people come to the deliberative, the budgets are probably going to be harder to raise. It's going to be more difficult to defend the budgets that each entity presents, but cuts will, I suspect, be more rational and reasonable. If that doesn't happen, and those budgets go to the voters in April, then the likelihood is that people will just shut down anything they can. They'll vote against all of the special articles.
That's an excellent point.
And I would be one of them.
So Peter, how does that translate into you not managing the budget committee, but steering the budget committee to say, look, we can't, just what Bill said, we can't go too far.
Right.
And we can't go, and if we don't go far enough, then we're going to get a bigger backlash at the general election and in April on the ballot.
Sure.
So what's your expectation, both of you, what's your expectation of what this budget committee is going to, how to handle the school budget this year? Have you met with Kevin yet in the administration?
Yes.
We've had a meeting with him,
Yeah.
budget-related meeting so far.
Yeah. It's difficult for me to remember because I'm on so many committees and several of which Kevin is on. But yes, one thing I've noticed is that, as always, as they've done since the Nelson regime, the budget is presented, proposed, and then is compared to last year's adopted budget with all of its special articles and all of its additions. And in comparing it to that, they claim that there's a 3% decrease over that adopted budget.
Right.
In fact, if you look at the proposed budget last year and compare that to this year's, it's almost a 4% increase already. And that's in addition to having eaten up almost a $2 million reduction in debt service when the bond for the high school was done away. And if you calculate that in there, they're already at an 8.7% increase.
Right.
And
Before warrant articles.
Yes, and there's talk of $4 million in warrant articles or thereabouts. That would be another 10%. So we're looking at almost a 19% increase this year. That's never going to fly, never.
So how do you approach that? I mean, it was the cut from $1 million, 1.2 last year and 800 year before. They were kind of like off the bottom line, right? I mean, do you approach it by, okay, school, cut, in this case, cut a school, so there's a $1 million savings, or do you going to cut off the bottom?
We get flack no matter how we do it, Mark. If we take the time to diligently go through unit by unit and make recommendations for reductions, they call us micromanagers. the folks that we're speaking of. If we make just a bottom line reduction, as you just mentioned, they call that irresponsible and without any merit. So we are in a lose-lose situation, and last year was a pretty good example of that, because I was surprised and actually quite disappointed that the school district came back with the framing of our $1.2 million reduction, in that the only way to achieve this would have been to have closed an elementary school. And I knew that that was a call to arms. I recognized that for what it was, and it was very effective. You know, that the 1.2 was very quickly restored during the beginning of that deliberative, as we recall.
Yes, and it was not only effective, it was dishonest. We were asking for a $1.2 million cut, and they ended up handing back almost well over $3 million at the end of the year, even though they claimed that there was no way they could make $1 million.
It is, and in defense of the school, because Kevin Richard I can hear him buzzing in my ear right now. He'll say, number one is which is true, they have to create a budget 18 months out.
Yes.
Which is difficult.
More of a challenge.
It is more of a challenge, and you know, anybody who, if you're off a couple $1 million on a $40 million budget 18 months out, that's pretty
and
pretty
health
good work.
insurance is often the fly in the ointment there too. The projected increases.
Yeah, which do or do not happen.
Yes.
And also there was a number or many unfilled positions.
Yes.
Right.
So they just weren't. That's one way to cut the teaching staff is don't hire anybody, I guess.
Well, we recognize that. I think at the last school meeting, at the deliberative, I commented that the school does sloppy budgeting because they have to. It's such a big budget. But it's fairly obvious that that the town and the school are going to have a hard time filling all the positions they want. The school has to advertise for a lot of positions, like special ed positions, whether they can get them or not. I think there's a recognition on that side that they're probably not going to get them, and that money is going to be available. But I guess there's a super sense of responsibility there to provide everything. And I think that works against the overall economy.
Peter, you talked about the damned if you do, damned if you don't thing.
Yes.
So which damned are you going for this year? Are you going to go for the specific cuts?
We haven't had our what I've carved out of our meeting schedule, Mark, is a day at the end of this month where we don't have any speakers, and all we do is we talk as a committee. I felt strongly about reinstituting that from having had such a time like that in the past under previous leaderships on the same board. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to listen, we're going to talk, and then we're going to have a final day of deliberation at the end of January and come up with, for lack of a better word, strategies and what we think we need to get done.
Either of you dare to predict where? I mean, I can't believe you're not going to say, hey, let's close the school, there's $1 million. Right? Is it going to be that specific?
I have no idea because I don't know what other people on the committee are thinking. I know that there is a greater sense of urgency in terms of economic reason on the committee than there used to be. There are people I never expected to be opposed to school issues who now seem not to be shaking their heads when someone else makes a derogatory comment about the need for certain expenses.
Well, what areas, let me ask it this way then, what areas do you think the school budget, I mean, if it's going up, whatever it is, 8, 10, 12% this year, what areas of the school budget do you think should be trimmed?
Well, I'll let you answer first, Bill.
Well, I have always thought that the system is overstaffed. Part of that has to do with the spread out nature of the physical plant. Too many administrators, too many adjunct positions at the elementary schools, for instance, and between the high school and the junior high school. But I think there is also a a demand among parents for very small class sizes. And I don't think that's what's really killing us on top of building maintenance.
Which kind of goes together. You can increase the class size a little bit by
Yeah.
Sure.
consolidating. Peter, what do you think?
Well, probably the thing that I'm going to be looking forward to hearing about is what part of the results were from the school board meeting from the night where we last had a meeting where we couldn't attend their meeting because we had a meeting last Monday. On that agenda were the boiler proposal for, which was a warrant article for $1 million. And I believe the chair had also introduced or had tasked the administration with coming up with a figure for K through 3 or you know, early elementary, and I'll just use the word remedial practices to try to boost literacy and math in those grades. And they were tasked with coming up with a dollar figure for the potential of adding that as yet another warrant article. So everything is still kind of fluid right now. Things are still moving. We have the budget, as Kevin has shown us, for the school district. We have some sense of what the warrant articles, but we don't have the whole package yet. So I would defer to, or I'd prefer rather to wait to see where we're at holistically before we really determine or tip our hand a
It's
little
a very
bit.
diplomatic answer, Peter. I have to admit.
That's what makes him a good chairman.
Thank you, Bill.
Well, let's move the arrows to the town side. I mean,
Sure.
for years, the town side would say they do a pretty good job. They don't do a whole lot.
Yeah.
They plow the roads and see you later. And Paul
Sure.
designs a bridge every once in a while.
Yeah.
You know. So now it's different.
Yes.
And they've added they've increased the staff. I mean, there's a lot going on for one thing. I mean,
Yes, right.
the demand side, there's no question about it with
Sure.
all this going on. But now they've increased the staff and with the inspectors and so forth. Are you going to be looking? And last night we were just talking about this before we went on the air here. And yesterday, apparently, the selectmen have decided to move all that inspection stuff, pretty much put it on hold and make it a warrant article.
Okay.
So all these inspectors are going to be, and I don't know the details yet. Today's Wednesday, so it'll
Right.
be in tomorrow's paper, and I'm sure Valley Vision will have it. But are you going to be looking as discerningly, as closely as the town budget as the school budget? What do you think about the town budget?
There is less to look at
Right.
in the town, and that often makes it more controversial because their services are, you notice when they're not there. One thing I'm wondering is if they're not going to do the inspections that some of the staff was hired for, I think. Are they going to retain that staff? Of course, we have to have a code enforcement officer no matter what.
Right.
But I don't know if all I think
But there's no glaring areas that you would look at?
well, there's the police request for expansion of the police station is one, and we have both been through that building. I've been through it twice. Even went up into the attic to take a
The
look.
police station? Is this
Yeah.
when you were 16 and in the drunk cell? Or?
That was a different jail.
Different location.
that was, up
that
on,
was a Seavey Street jail.
Gosh, that's okay.
They had pine bunks. In the new one, I think they have concrete bunks. I
Can't carve your initials in that one.
No, well, well, I suppose they didn't search you for a knife the last time. they just, in fact, they didn't lock the doors. It was sort of like, who was that fellow in Mayberry who used to put himself in jail?
Oh, right.
Sleep it off.
But the police station is, there's no denying that some of the needs there are crucial. Some are merely inconveniences of lesser or greater extent, but all of that could be taken care of by the addition they're requesting, and I'm here to support the idea that it's needed.
As am I.
But not a full build out. You're saying not a new building.
Oh, not an entirely new building.
But is the proposal for a new building? Or
No,
It's for
addition?
renovation.
it's for an
Okay.
And
It's
renovation and addition, to be clear.
Okay, and it's like
Yeah.
$5.5 million? Is that
Oh,
what-
no,
what
it's
is it?
closer to 9.
8.5,
Okay,
8.7.
Yeah.
It's hard,
Yeah.
these municipal buildings, they're just proposing one in Freiburg at
Saw that.
15.5.
Yeah.
Right.
It's hard
Yeah.
to keep it all straight.
But
Sure.
the question for me is affordability, and especially with the school. I mean, if we're going to target the school for inefficiency and expense, then we've got to look at the town. And even though this would be bonded, it wouldn't be $9 million this year. It would be $9 million over 20 or 25 years.
25, yeah.
And
Peter, what do you think? Town side, you kind of agree with that analysis?
Well, the one thing about the town side that does differ a little bit is that not even just at our urging, but because I think they've taken a hard look at it, is on the revenue side, the town has done, I'll say, a good job of improving the revenue streams through the building permit application process, the zoning permit, other things that have just enhanced revenues overall. And we consistently have seen in a couple of years, and I think we're going to continue to see this into the future, them really under budgeting what their revenue streams are, and seeing like some pretty hefty surpluses like we saw this year. I don't think anybody believes that we're going to see the kind of surplus that this year. I think they produced something on the order of another $2.5 or $3 million of surplus on top of what they had been carrying from last year. Which, by the way, was the source of the decision by the select board to put $2 million of surplus funds to use to reduce the tax rate into the formula for this year. So the tax bills that people are seeing now are reflecting that $2 million reduction, from surplus funds. So I think there's always room for some things to be how should I say, looked at. But once again, we still haven't seen the warrant articles for the town yet either, so we don't have the whole picture as of yet. We have a pretty good idea what the operating budget is going to be looking like, and we just have more work to do.
Look, it sounds like from both of you, except for maybe the police station as a big add-on, it seems like both of you are pretty satisfied. It looks pretty good. I mean, like the town manages. I mean, as you said, Bill, it's just much easier to get. One thing is much easier to get a handle on for anybody. When I've seen Kevin present the school budget, it's 6 inches thick, and I mean,
Yes,
nobody
indeed.
can go through that. I mean,
Well, we do though. Well, many of us do.
some of you,
Right.
Yeah.
We do.
All right, we got only about a minute or two left. How about predictions? Like, what do you think? How impactful do you think this the new reval was? I mean, I know
Very.
literally because everybody's taxes are going up 1,000 or so.
Yeah.
But how do you think that's going to translate into voting turnout of deliberative and the vote in April?
I'll quickly say there'll be a high turnout for the deliberative, higher than we've seen.
And what do you think? What are you putting a number on?
I'd say 250 minimum of people showing
the
up.
school.
For the school and for the town.
All right.
I'm also going to say that I think that because of the reval and because of property taxes, and the pain inflection point has reached critical mass, and I think that is going to have an effect on both the deliberative and the final version of the outcome at the SB2 vote in April as well. And I see that anything that we advance for recommendations, I think they're going to stick this year.
So ironically, you guys are actually going to have to be. You're gonna have to thread the needle. You don't want to go too far, and you don't want to go
That's
enough,
right.
so you can
Right.
prevent the real cuts
Yeah.
at the
Defensible.
defensible. Bill, what's your prediction? How many people are deliberative?
250 sounds about right at town. I bet there'll be that many teachers and parents alone at the school. We might have to move into the new gym, the big new gym again, as we did in 2011, and I hope the school lobby is a little more polite than they were last time. But as far as whether the cuts will hold, I don't know about the deliberative, especially at the school, because there seems to be less concern about the average person's taxes at the school meetings. If that doesn't happen, I think you'll see some major cuts in special articles.
The silent majority will rear its head.
Will finally wake up and.
Yeah, but you got to think. I mean, there's got to be some momentum with the school with Kevin. To me, I've always wondered why didn't anybody ask Kevin Richard what he thought about closing the school. And he finally, not finally, nobody asked him before. And so now it's on the record. And I know Mike D, the chairman, he's for that. And
Yes.
you got to think that's just changed people's mind. It changed Mark Consul's mind, our buddy Mark Consul, who was a neighborhood advocate forever. Don't roll your eyes, Bill. We'll leave it on a high note. I know you guys were at the, were you at the?
In Concord all day
Oh,
yesterday
yes.
as well. Yeah.
Did Bill come out feet first?
No, he's still
I
standing.
walked. I walked.
Was that,
No, it was a good time, and I'll say,
Yeah.
just in the spirit of cooperation, I took away a lot from that meeting, both in information and in just the ways in which our representatives, our elected officials, town staff, we all banded together to try to get something done in Concord, and I think we have some momentum forward. And I think it's meaningful.
Bill?
Much the same. I was much more encouraged in Concord than I have been in Conway.
Oh, good. So that means you're going to write a pro-Democrat column because they're all our reps are Dems, right?
Not likely.
All right, Peter. Good to see you.
Thanks, same, Mark.
Bill,
Bye.
take care.
You as well.